I just recently wrapped up my first playthrough of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door on Switch, and I'm sure many of you have done the same. So I figured it might be fun to get together and look back at the chapters of the game, and rank them all, the prologue included. So make sure to share your ranking in the comments below and be aware of spoilers coming up. Let's get started. Now, let me make it very clear, I don't think any chapter in The Thousand Year Door is remotely close to being bad. But of course, there must always be a worst one. In my eyes, that is chapter 2, set in the Bogley Woods and the Great Tree specifically. Let's start with the pluses. The Punies are super cute and one of my favorite original characters in the game. In fact, I'm a firm believer Punio should have been a partner, he feels like he would fit right in. The mechanic of all the Punies following you though, I'm not a huge fan of. It's cute at first, but I don't think it's interesting enough for as long as it sticks around. It also doesn't help that the layout of the Great Tree is a complete maze, which just feels very unnecessary. You constantly have to go back and forth, and with a locale that doesn't exactly have many set pieces to identify where you are, I found myself getting lost on several occasions. It's been 20 years since I played the game, alright, I don't have the map memorized. Speaking of the graphical appearance of the Bogley Woods, I don't think it looks so good. Something about it just isn't easy on the eyes for me, and compared to the other chapters, I don't think it suits the new graphical style of the game as well. Maybe it's an unpopular opinion, as I feel like there will be plenty of people who love this, I'm just not one of them. In a game with some amazing chapters, Bogley Woods is my least favorite area to visit. I feel like this might be a hot take as well, but the second worst chapter in my opinion is chapter 4, set in Twilight Town. This chapter is filled to the brim with memorable moments, like Vivian joining the gang, eavesdropping on the crows, and just Dupliss in general. Another highlight is the fake out ending, but with this new Switch version of the game, it doesn't hit the same. And it has nothing to do with a drop in quality or delivery, it's the result of the quality of life improvements. Don't get me wrong, the warpipe from Twilight Town to Creepy Steeple is a very welcome addition, but it is very obvious now that the chapter wasn't made with it in mind. As such, it now is, in my experience, by far the shortest chapter, bordering on too short even. And to make matters worse, too much of an already short chapter is still spent walking back and forth between the two main settings of the chapter, even with the warpipe. So, while this part of the adventure is definitely memorable, I think it is among the weakest in the game from an enjoyment and gameplay perspective. Next up is the first real chapter of the game, set in Petalburg and Hooktail Castle. As such, this area has yet to take the training wheels off and comes with a handful of tutorials. While that is not a big problem, it can be overlooked either. I do enjoy the tone, characters and visuals of this chapter though, as well as commend it for being a very well crafted opening one, although I do think the themes are a little predictable. Green plains, a peaceful village filled with Koopas, and then a castle with a dragon boss. It's not even close to being as creative as later chapters are. Now, being a bit basic is not a bad thing, which is also why this chapter is not at the absolute bottom, but when the competition is as stellar as it is, I can't really put it much higher, I'm afraid. What also doesn't help is that the partner you get here is Koops, who is probably my least favorite partner in the game, both in terms of gameplay as well as characterization. I'd say this is the only chapter in the Thousand Year Door that could fit in later titles like the Origami King, which is not really what you want from a game with so much bravery to go to uncharted territory as this one. Before you ever start chapter 1 however, you have already finished what I'm gonna consider a separate entry, being the prologue, introducing you to the setting of Rogueport. This is such a strong way to kick off the game. From the moment you set foot on the docks, this feels like such a unique area in the Mario universe. Credit card scammers, gang violence, a noose in the town square. Where have you ever seen that before in this series? That alone makes for an incredibly memorable experience that instantly hooks you on the game. The prologue also introduces the Rogueport sewers, and while this is definitely not my favorite locale of the game, I do like how much it hints at your future abilities and invites you to revisit later, almost like a Metroidvania in a sense. To top this all off is the introduction of Goombella, one of my favorite partners in the game, and her tattle ability that makes for a lovely guide while first exploring Rogueport and its many kooky characters. Of course, this is just a little prologue. It has no boss battles or challenge at all really, so it still loses out to some of the game's later areas, but for what it is, the prologue is really good. We fast forward towards the end of the game now, as chapter 7 is next, set in Far Outpost, the Moon, but mostly the X-Knot Fortress. This chapter used to be infamous for its horrendous backtracking, and while the warpipes in Rogueport sewers have decreased the tediousness, it now feels more pointless than anything. I can imagine that if you're some kid playing this game now, not knowing the original is 20 years old, you're left wondering why General White is so unnecessarily annoying to track down. Either way, I do enjoy this chapter, with its in total 3 new locations. Far Outpost is a nice little area, its snowy motif makes for a nice change of pace. Meanwhile, the moon is cool in concept, but a tad annoying in practice, with its severely lacking enemy diversity and slow walk speed. The X-Knot Fortress is just really great. It's very satisfying to finally walk these halls as Mario instead of Peach, and Tech's final moments make for a touching end to a very enjoyable chapter. Though, if I may offer a final nitpick for this chapter, it's a little disappointing the boss is just Magnus von Grapple again. And just like in the game, Chapter 8 is next, set in the Palace of Shadow. This chapter needs some time to build up, as the beginning of the palace I find honestly a little underwhelming. The atmosphere is a little eerie, but nothing too spooky, and the tension doesn't really build as you go further down into the depths. When you reach the Palace of Shadow Tower, the chapter starts to ramp up, but it's here where its greatest weakness lies in my opinion. First, a fight against Gloomtail, a Hooktail clone, then a puzzle in the tower that's more tedious and tricky, and then another fight against familiar foes, being the Shadow Sisters and Duplis. These 3 are not too exciting, but fortunately, what comes next is the quality you would expect from the final area for a game this good. The dungeon throws some fun and engaging puzzles at you, forcing you to call upon some of your partner's lesser used abilities in interesting ways. Next follows the excellent trio of battles against Grodus, Bowser and the Shadow Queen, all 3 of which make for a decent enough challenge. And of course, the ending is also part of this chapter, and it's a fantastic one. You can clearly tell Paper Mario is made by the same people who work on Fire Emblem, because the attention to wrapping up the stories of your pals and what became of them has been a staple of Fire Emblem games since before Paper Mario was even a thing. Even the credits of the 1000 Year Door deserve compliments, that's how fantastic this game is. That said, Chapter 8 just comes short of the podium, and it has everything to do with the first half of the Palace of Shadow. We arrive at the top 3 now, with the bronze medal going to Chapter 6, set in the Access Express and finally ending at Parsley Heights. I absolutely adore the theme of this chapter. Everything being contained to the train means you get really familiar with the setting and its limited cast of characters, and the detective angle elevates it even more. That said, a little too much time is spent just walking from card to card, which without enemies can feel especially tedious. While I can definitely overlook that, the reason this chapter isn't higher on the podium has everything to do with the areas outside of the train. Riverside Station and Parsley Heights are both locales that don't really do it for me personally. For Riverside Station, it's mostly a linearity thing I think, aside from me just personally not digging the vibe with this one. For Parsley Heights, it's definitely the result of it feeling a little undercooked. There's not much of note here, and the Parsley Sanctum is basically just doing the same puzzle twice, so I can't consider that a highlight either. But don't let the sour notes mislead you, Chapter 6 is excellent, putting the stellar characterization the Paper Mario franchise is famous for on full blast. The adventure in Glitzville may be all about bringing home the Golden Belt, but on this list it has to settle for silver and a second place. An incredibly memorable and fun chapter that goes all in on battles, but doesn't neglect the story or characters for it. It's no surprise this chapter spawned some iconic characters for the series, like Rockhawk and Grubba. The main mystery it revolves around is also truly a mystery, in the sense that I genuinely didn't know who was evil and who wasn't my first time around. And I've heard friends who are playing the Switch version as their first time say the same. That may sound like a logical thing, but in a series like Mario that is definitely not a given, so it's a sign of some excellent writing. Another feather in Glitzville's cap is the incredibly unique setting, with an unprecedented tone that is hit so masterfully. It almost makes you wonder why we haven't seen similar locales since, considering the devs definitely have a good feel for the inspirations. Chapter 3 also is one of my favorite rogue port setups of the game, having us meet with Don Pianta of the Pianta Syndicate in order to obtain a ticket for the blimp. So, now you may be wondering why this chapter is at number 1. Well, first of all, we're talking amazing chapter against amazing chapter here. If this was a tier list, they would both be in S rank. But I think this chapter's biggest flaw is the rise from the minor league. It takes a few battles too long, which is especially a problem since these battles are piss easy. It was a part of the game where I have to admit I found myself getting bored a little, which didn't happen at all during, in my opinion, the best chapter of the game. And that is Chapter 5, the Island of Keelhaul Key. From the first moment, this chapter is just gold, with the interactions with Flavio, one of my favorite characters, to the touching story of Admiral Barbary, one of my favorite partners. The entire crew is just super fun throughout the journey, with Crump in his 4 Eyes costume as the highlight. The jungle makes for an interesting new locale, and while the middle part does drag a tiny bit, the chapter is back on top from the moment you first enter Pirate's Grotto. This is in my opinion the best dungeon-esque area of the game, with fun puzzles as well as a nice atmosphere, which all culminates in the great boss battle against Cortez and the fun shenanigans with the X-Nauts that follow it. It's from top to bottom a very well-rounded and enjoyable chapter, and while it may not be as iconic as Glitzville or even the much lower ranked Twilight Town, it more than makes up for it with its great story, character interactions and level design. Again, Keelhaul Key and Glitzville are very close, but it's chapter 5 that takes home the gold for me. And that has been my list, but I'm very curious to hear how you guys would rank the chapters, so please share your list in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, and maybe even subscribe to the channel to hear me talk about Mario on the regular. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.